Good morning. Today is Friday, June 24th, 2016. We're at the JCC in our beautiful library, and I'm interviewing Michael Siegel, and he's going to be talking about his Vietnam career. Okay. Good morning, Michael. Welcome to the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County's Judaica Library, located at the JCC in Stamford. When did you serve in the military?
1967
Till?
to 1969.
Okay. Were you drafted?
I was drafted at 19 from New York.
When did you live in New York?
I lived in the Bronx for most of my life.
Did you serve abroad?
I did.
What are some of the memories you have of that experience?
Well, the memories actually are not clouded. They're very prevalent. And I served in Vietnam. I went there in 1967 at the age of 19.
Where exactly were you located?
I was located in northern province of Vietnam. At that time, it was a very, very volatile area.
Where did you do your basic training?
My basic training was done in Fort Jackson in South Carolina.
And did you go any place after that?
I went to an AIT, which is Advanced Infantry Training, and then I went to leadership school.
And where was the advanced infantry training?
All in Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay. When you were drafted, I'm sorry, backing up. When you were drafted, did you try to get out of the draft or not?
I think I had this false expectation that I was going to save the world. And when I got drafted, I felt it was my political or my personal opportunity to give something back to the United States. I was very naive.
Did your family feel the same way?
No. My family wanted me to try to get into the reserves, which was not possible because I was already drafted. And I don't know that I would have been taken into a reserve unit in any event.
What about your friends at the time?
Many of my friends went, and that was part of the catalyst for me to want to go into the service because my friends were all being drafted.
Okay, did you have siblings?
Brother,
older,
who was
younger?
older.
Did he serve?
No, he was 4F with severe asthma, so he was exempt.
Okay. Going back to in Vietnam, where exactly were you stationed in Vietnam?
There's an area called Chu Lai. That was about 100 miles, roughly, I guess, north of Saigon. It was in the middle of Saigon and Da Nang. And
so was it closer to Da Nang?
Yes.
Okay. And when you got there, did you see much action on the front lines?
I was unfortunately put into a very highly trained unit, which was infantry. And I was put into the infantry as a replacement. They were losing a lot of their soldiers, so they brought over the new recruits and put them into the front line.
Fresh meat, huh?
Fresh meat.
Okay. What exactly were your duties as infantry?
The duties were, number one, and first and foremost, was to try to stay alive. We were on what is known as search and destroy missions. We would go on night excursions. We tried to emulate the enemy who worked at night. And our job was to try to, engage the enemy, which it was the Viet Cong or the North Vietnamese.
How fast after you actually arrived at the base did you get into action?
On the third day, we were going out on patrol. We were pinned down by a sniper who had us in his sights very clearly, could see us. Once you go under fire, you kind of grow up very quickly.
Was there many casualties among your peers, among your colleagues?
There were a number of casualties. That was part of the growing experience. People ask, and perhaps one of the questions are, do you make friends or do you still keep in touch with your friends? You really avoided making close friendships. And that was part of the learning experience.
Can you explain why?
You would see or you would encounter times when your friends would be killed. And you almost become blocked by emotion. Better them than me.
Mm.
That was the code of everybody that basically were in the infantry.
So you didn't stay in touch with any, you have any reunions when you got back? Or
Two.
anything?
There were reunions. I did not participate. I wanted to, and I did put my military service away when I came back. I was done. It was over. I did my tour of duty. About 8-9 years ago, and I won't take a lot of time with this, my youngest daughter, researched my military career. And through a long process, she got in touch with some of the survivors that I served with. And we were in touch with one another. There was no immediacy to get together or, spend time together. We just reached out, we emailed, we called, and then we were done.
When you said survivors, that's an implication that there was a high death count in your group.
There was an extremely high death count because we were known as a light infantry group, a company. And what that meant was we were in the jungles. We were stationed in the areas where there was enemy activity. We only carried our weapons and our backpacks, which weighed 50, 60 pounds, full of personal belongings, food, whatever.
Well, you said initially that you were search and destroy, so I remember they used to have a term, Zippo Brigade. Was that you?
Pretty much.
Can you, for those people who don't know what I'm talking about, you want to explain what that meant?
Well, for us, we went, just as an aside, we would go into a village. And what would happen is you would lose your humanity. You're in a village, and a lot of the villages, houses were straw. They were, not
Huts.
brick or anything, they were straw. And a lot of the soldiers became obsessed with destruction. And they would go and use their lighters and set these houses on fire. And it was devastating. For somebody like myself who had empathy, I couldn't stop them because they would try and stop me, and it was just this very sad stage of events.
What about the leadership? Well, how did they respond to that?
Leadership was a function of how many kills you can have, because the leadership would get bonused. They would get promoted. If they had a high body count, they were taken out of the action after 6 months, and they got a promotion. So it was up to them to show a lot of destruction and killings and just the whole, way that the Army honored these people made it difficult for those of us who were not officers.
Right. But did you get bonuses like R&R because of the higher kills?
I did. I went to Taiwan.
Okay.
After 6 months.
What did you what did you do for recreation, or how often were you able to get sort of off duty? It's how many days on, how many days off kind of thing.
Usually we're in the field for no more than 15 days. And they would resupply us with clean clothes every 15 days. We'd be wearing the same, outfits. If we saw water, we would try to wash our, garments. We would then go back to what is known as a base camp, which was usually a very high hill where you could go and shower and you get hot meals, and you could only stay there, or we only stayed there for 5 days. And that was like going on vacation.
When you were there, how did you stay in touch with friends and family back home? And if you did, what really did you tell them?
I think the only one that I was very, very honest with was my brother. I wrote my mother every day. That was one of the requirements, that you kept in touch with your family, or you wrote letters. They encouraged you to write letters. So I wrote to my mother, and I basically told her I was on vacation, that it couldn't be more fun, that I was not in combat. I wrote her the same letter every day, and she literally got a letter a day. To my brother, that's who I vented to, about the encounters that we had, the losses that we had. And I think from that experience, my brother became very shut down. He just did not want to write me and get into any more letters that indicated what I was doing.
Did you keep in touch with any of your old friends?
I did.
And were you honest with them?
Very. We all ended up in different places in Vietnam. We would communicate because we were friends at home. We were all in the same place, so we understood what was going on. We didn't have to say it. We didn't write that much, but we did stay in touch.
When you said you went to Thailand, did you go to any place else?
No.
Did you ever get back to Saigon, or no?
No.
Okay. When you were in the military, did you participate in any Jewish activities like the holidays? Or my brother-in-law also became religious because he got off.
Part of my growing up was without a Jewish experience. My parents were not religious. My parents didn't, have Passover or nothing that was Jewish. However, when I got to Vietnam, somebody said to me, look, you should go check out if you could be a chaplain's assistant, because I was one of the few Jewish, people over in Vietnam. And so I went to see the Jewish rabbi chaplain, and he asked me what prayers I knew. And I went, don't know any. He says, okay, can you set a Seder table? I think the only thing I might have said is, what is a Seder table? So I didn't get that job. So I went back to the infantry. But it opened up a part of me, which is my Jewishness, which I never really connected with until that time.
Okay. When you, I know the big thing, because I've read a lot on Vietnam, is the big thing is when you have short time, as they call it, would that become significant, counting down till you could leave? Was that significant to you, or no?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Well, I know that the people who said 30 days, they wanted to make sure they never in danger, because they were supposing rumors that that's when you were at greater risk, when you started thinking about going home.
Well, that's right. The only time I started to think about going home was that 30 days. I requested, and it was denied, that I be allowed to go back to the base camp and wait out my 30 days and go home. Because I was such a seasoned, infantryman, they needed me to remain in the field and help the new recruits, which was quite many, many new recruits. So I stayed right up to the end.
Were you injured at all?
I was.
Okay, can you talk about that?
It was more or less they threw what was a firebomb, and it caught my uniform on fire. I was lucky that two of my infantry mates threw me to the ground and actually saved me from getting, really seriously hurt. It got me out of the field for 2 weeks, and for recuperation I went to Da Nang.
Okay. What about bats of dysentery and all that other stuff? Was that just par for the course?
No, I mean, I was very fortunate that, I didn't have any, problems with any kind of disease or nothing like that.
Nothing like jungle rot and all that kind of stuff?
Jungle rot was very prevalent, And part of the problem was that we were out in the field for so long, and our feet would damp, and you would get blisters, and it was not a fun time.
And you wore 3 pairs of socks?
Actually, I did. Tried to keep peeling them off.
Okay. When did you actually return home?
In April of 1969.
Did you go someplace first before they released you?
I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky
How
for
long?
6 more months.
Okay. And what did you do there?
I was a infantry trainer. Fort Knox is a armor tank camp. However, I trained the infantry. They had infantry groups there as well. And these were men who were going to go to Vietnam.
Did you get a promotion in rank at that point?
I did. I ended up becoming a sergeant. At one point, early on in my career, they wanted me to go to OCS, Officers Training School. My requirement was that I would sign up for a minimum of 4 years. Needless to say, I said, thank you, no thank you.
Okay. So you came back. When did you come back to the Bronx?
I came back to Queens.
Oh,
We had
Queens.
since moved to Queens.
Oh, where in Queens?
In Cambria Heights,
Okay.
which is near Jamaica.
Hmm. And when did you actually come home?
I came home
That
in
April?
I came home in September of '69.
Okay. And how were you received by friends and family? Do you remember that? You remember the first time seeing your family?
I remember the first time I saw my family. I took a number of planes. After Vietnam, they sent us to San Francisco to Chicago to New York Kennedy Airport. My mother, my father, a couple of aunts, not my brother. Then I remember getting off the plane and seeing them standing there. And it was very surreal because at this point in my life, my emotions were turned off. So seeing my parents, it was just seeing my parents. It wasn't that I got excited or I was happy or I was, emotionally, upset. Nothing. No feelings whatsoever.
So you had a few days off, and then you went to Fort Knox, or
I had actually very little time off. I had 5 days between coming home from Vietnam and then going to Fort Knox.
okay. Did you have problems when you finally came back to New York? Did you have problems adjusting to civilian life?
Very much so. Not recognizing it, but in behavior, it was very clear that I had issues. Any loud noises, trucks backfiring, you could see me lying on the ground, in the middle of...
It backfired. It
yes.
hit the ground. By that point, by the time you came back, the anti-war movement had become very big. What was your reaction to it? Were you ever confronted by anti-war demonstrators?
It's a two-part answer.
I know. It's a 2-part question.
The first answer is yes. When I got back from Vietnam, I was going through with a number of us through the terminal at San Francisco Airport. Protesters were waiting because they knew this is where the soldiers were departing. They threw bags at us. You can only imagine what was in the bags. They screamed at us that we were baby killers, we were murderers. It was, again, just something that happened. It didn't make me get emotional. It didn't make me get angry. It didn't, I was at a point in my life where I believed in what they were doing. And I came later into a situation where, as a Vietnam veteran, my words I felt were much stronger to say this is an unjust war. And so I joined the movement months after I got out of the service.
You know about when?
I moved more or less into protesting in April of 1970.
Okay. Did we know about My Lai at that point or not yet?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Did you ever hear about that when things like that when you were still in country, as they say?
Without question. Again, what happened was these people, these soldiers, thought themselves as invincible, that, you know, murdering was justified because you could say, oh, this was the enemy. Even if it was just a farmer or somebody who was, you know, in the rice paddies. There were mothers who were, you know, killed. There were young children, especially when they went into the towns. Most of the time when you go into a town, there's no men. There's only women and their children. Because the men are either forced to go into the Viet Cong or they're killed by the Viet Cong because they're sympathizers with the United States.
How long did you stay in the anti-war movement? Until the end of the war?
Too much going on in my life and trying to set up a career at work. I probably stayed about a year. My most, I guess, not funny story, but ironic, is that my father got a phone call. We surmised that it was probably the FBI or something, saying that it would be a very good thing if he stopped his son from his efforts. Where that came from, how it came, it's anybody's guess. But, you know, he didn't have that kind of control over me, so I didn't stop.
Okay. I'm assuming you did not stay with any join any veterans organizations after you got back?
I didn't.
Okay. All right. And so, did you use the GI Bill for anything when you got back?
I didn't. When I got out of the service, I had a lot of opportunity to go to college, to use the GI Bill. I went back to where I left work. I went back to the same company.
What were you doing?
I was doing accounting for a real estate company.
Okay.
They held a position for me. I'm not sure if that was required by law, but I was very grateful. And so I went back to work. And I really left everything about the Army or the military behind me, as if it never happened.
Your job, what borough was it in?
It was in Manhattan.
Okay, thank you. How do you think your wartime experiences have affected your life? That's sort of a loaded question, but
it's a question that when I had said I was emotionless,
right,
and I think that carried, not think, I know, that carried into my private life. Things didn't affect me. Loss didn't affect me. When a family member passed, there were no tears, there were no feelings. It was just something that happened and I couldn't control it. And it took a long time for me to really get in touch with my emotions.
You mentioned your daughter. I'm assuming you were married.
Yes.
And when did that all come about in relationship to, your service?
Well, it took a while. I was 28 when I got married. I think I was at a point where, in those days, it was always get married, have a child, start a family. And that's what I was following what, the normal process.
But did your emotions change over those several years until you reached a point where you could marry?
I would say not dramatically. This again, I'm thinking back to that time frame, a lot of years. But yes, I think my emotions were locked up.
Okay. And you still stayed all those years in as an accountant for...
Well, I went to different jobs within the company.
Okay, but it was still the same company?
Yes.
All right. Over the years, do you now look back on the idea of military service differently than you did when you were 19?
Definitely.
Can you explain how?
I think there were positives about my military service. I grew up very quickly. I'm not sure I know all the nuances of the military today, but it certainly is very different. Takes a much higher skill level because the automation that is in the military today is mostly driven by computers. Ours was, a rifle and a helmet. So I think that, today military service is very different.
Mm-hmm. The question is now, what message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
I would encourage people to voice their dissent, to not just accept, that, oh, this is, a war that we need to fight. I don't know what wars we need to fight. The experiences that we've had in Iraq, experiences that we have now today in Syria, nothing comes of it. Nothing has changed. Iraq is, I don't have to say it, but Iraq is just a mess. What goes on, is just terrible. And I would hope that, these generations will voice their dissent.
Okay. Is there anything you feel we haven't discussed that you'd like to add to this interview?
Well, I think the one thing I say, and I've always said, was a 19-year-old that went to Vietnam ended up being, an 80-year-old. It opened up everything that I could possibly learn all in a year's time. My experiences, my friendships, my disappointments, everything. Every emotion was touched at one time or another.
You had to grow up very fast.
Very fast.
All right. Thank you very much. Hi, welcome back. We decided we did not touch on something that was important to you about anti-Semitism in the military. Can you talk about that?
I can. As I said early on in the interview, I did not come from a very religious or religious at all family. I was bar mitzvahed. After my bar mitzvah, I don't think I was in a synagogue until we had a child and we did a baby naming. When I was drafted, I didn't think of myself as a Jewish boy going in the Army. But on the first day that I was in the Army, they had us all standing together. The first time, the sergeant who got up on a big platform, it was a Sunday. I remember it very clearly. The sergeant said that the Protestants should step to the right because they were going to go to church. The Christians should step to the left, and the effing Jews should stay where they are. So, being, not sure what an effing Jew was at that time, I looked around, I looked behind me, I looked to the left because I figured I'd be with the other Jewish guys. I was the only Jewish guy. I was probably at that point saying, ooh, this is not so good. Then I started to encounter anti-Semitism. I wrote my mother and I wanted her to send me a mezuzah. And I wore it. I wore it out. I wore it proudly. I figured if I was going to get persecuted, I'm going to put it in their face. One thing that I do recall very clearly is when I got injured, I was in a military hospital for a period of time. And a chaplain, Christian chaplain, came in to speak to the various, soldiers that were injured. And when he got to me, and I had my mezuzah, he says to me, son, I'm sorry, I don't know what to call or talk to you about your kind. And I was confused. What was my kind? What was he talking about? Why couldn't he say just get well and everything? So it started to really become very clear to me that there was so much anti-Semitism. And just one other example, this was during 1967, this was during the war in Israel. And I was in a base camp. I was sitting, hanging out with some other soldiers, and a guy comes up to me and he says, Siegel, you're going home. You're going to your people. And I was so excited. I couldn't believe, why was I, after 6 months, I was going to be sent home. No, he was talking about going to my people in Israel. And then when he said it, I looked at him and I said, Israel? Where's that? And what people? That's how their mindset was. You're Jewish and you're different. And so, it was, again, as I said, it was very clear to me that my Jewishness shouldn't be hidden. And I made that clear.
Okay, thank you.